So you have your story idea. You know that you want to turn your project into an established finished work, but how exactly do you get that script written? So in today's videos, I'm going to talk about how to turn an idea into a script. So I just want to start off by introducing myself. So my name is Elizabeth. I am a writer who has done audio dramas. I've done fan made productions such as my Downton Abbey audio drama, which is the first video I ever posted on this channel. And I've also done another fan made audio drama called The Blood Bandits, which is based on the legend of Korra. So those have been my fan made projects. I've also done an original audio drama called Alemondra, and I am currently working on finding and recording for my short audio drama story, The Rose of Tetela, which is adapted for bilingual audiences. So I know a thing or two about writing a script, but the hard part, honestly, I think most of the time is just having that idea and turning it into something tangible that you can work with. I definitely have been guilty of starting a project and not having the full script done, at least for a first season. So I can really, attest to the fact that getting your script done is a super important process of, excuse me, of getting your project off the ground. So let's see. I know in my last video about the three types of writers, I talked a little bit about how I am not a writer who plans out a lot of what they write. However, I do think that there's a lot of elements of a story that you do need to think about before writing. I think for me, this is stuff I do without writing it down or without thinking about it very explicitly. However, especially for folks who are artists and they go into trying to write a script, I think it's super important that you think about those elements of your story. So, just to address artists or animators out there who don't come from a writing first background, I think it's easy for them to get bogged down in naming certain elements of characters that aren't really relevant to writing an actual script. Um, so I know that certain things are important in order to draw a character, and I know that those components are also important into bringing that story to life. But when it just comes to writing a script, uh, there's kind of like a bare bones thing that you need to keep in mind. But I mean, before we get into any of that, I'm kind of moving a little bit too far ahead. So I recently watched a couple YouTube videos to get some kind of book recommendations for script writing. Now, there isn't a book that I know about that focuses on audio dramas. I mean, I'm sure once I look for it, there's going to be books that talk about animation script writing, but I kind of looked into screenplays for movies and I think TV as well, but I think the focus I've been looking at is movies. I don't plan on writing movies or for a while, maybe a TV show, but definitely not really movies at the moment. But there's still gems of information that you can gather from those types of books. So one of the books I looked at, it's a very common read from my understanding. It's called Save the Cat. So a very important takeaway I got from that book was to create a log line or a really compelling summary for your story. So I kind of didn't really agree with the notion that before you do anything, you need a good log line and like that you shouldn't even think about characters or anything in a story before that. I think it's okay to have a idea of your characters and what's going to happen to them before you do your log line. I think because an idea kind of starts with that, I think it's kind of weird to just try and come up with summaries and then write a story. I'm not going to stop you from doing either or. I mean, it's your choice what you're going to do. But that was a super important takeaway I got because my original story, Alamondra, like I talk about it left and right, but I could never give a short, sweet, concise summary about it. And in part, I'm really debating about cutting out a lot of characters and making it into various mini stories or something. But I digress, right? So, Alamondra, let's just kind of pick it apart. It's a story about a rebellion leader, a king turned dictator, racing to find and use a mind control machine to turn the tides of a war. So that is my log line. That's an important piece to think about because without that, you don't know how to explain your story to others. And that's kind of the point of writing a story. It's meant to be read, it's meant to be heard, it's meant to be watched by other people. So having that kind of log line or that summary is super important. It kind of gives your story some structure, gives you an idea of where you're going, and even for someone who's a writer like me, where I write the story as I go along, I feel like the characters tell me the story. It's a really useful tool to do. And it's kind of gets challenging the further along in your writing you get if you don't do that. So I highly recommend that you do that ahead of time. Um, Yeah, it can kind of save you a lot of heartache, a lot of difficulties in the editing and revision process if you do that first. So, kind of the next part of what you need to think about is your main character. So, like I was saying a little bit earlier, it's a little bit beyond height, weight, eye color, their birthday. You need to think about what challenges is your main character going to face in the lesson that they learn. So, again, this might feel like a little bit redundant to talk about, I think, because you have an idea, so you might already know these things. Again, I'm just repeating what you need to keep in mind just so that way you kind of go from just random idea to something more solid, right? So, yeah, thinking about your main character is just to summarize is that important piece. I'm kind of leaning for writers that are like myself sometimes. Sometimes you don't always know every single character that's going to be in your story, and you don't always know, yeah, you don't always know exactly which characters are going to be in your story. Sometimes, as you're writing, you kind of make up characters because it makes sense for the scene. That's just my personal process. However, I do also believe that creating an episode outline is a super key component to writing a script and keeping it organized. If you don't do that, you're kind of risking a lot more work done in the editing and revision process. So, again, I'm going to reference Alamondra. I wrote 10 full episodes, a full season of it. But what I ended up finding is that I kept creating characters, kept creating side subplots, kept creating X, Y, and Z. And this is a super common feedback I was getting, but I was resisting it. And it was the fact that there's too many characters. You can't keep up with everybody, especially because you're listening to it and you're not watching it. So that's a whole different component. So when you're listening to a story, versus when you are watching a story. Like watching a story visually, you know who each character kind of is because you've seen them. But when you're just hearing characters, it's hard to remember, like, oh, episode this, episode that, this character that. Because it's just using, I'm going to imagine, like different parts of your brain to like process and analyze. So, with that being said, um, if you can plan out episode outlines, it's super important and I think it's super useful. So, an episode outline essentially would lay out the number of episodes for your season or the number of episodes that you want to start out with to release. And then you write down what happens in each episode, just key points. You don't need to write out certain quotes unless you want that to be a little guide for yourself. Like, I don't want to forget that I want to include this cool line or have like something like this between the scenes. Just be something like bullets. So, like, if I was going to use a Lamondra, maybe I would say first episode, rebellion leader makes a speech to soldiers. King goes to scientific base for the mind machine, blows it up. Scene or the next line would be the king captures uh, mind machine scientists and tells them they need to rebuild the machine within X time frame. And so right now with how I'm rewriting the story, it's different than what's up on YouTube, but you kind of get the idea. You make some bullets of what's going to happen for each individual scene. You If you want to, you can add specific lines, specific quotes for each scene, but just kind of keeping it bare bones is fine so you can kind of fill it in with your writing later. Um, so that's something you can do. So I've talked about it and how to create dialogue, but if you're going to be writing an audio drama script, it's super important that you use your characters' dialogues to advance the story forward. So this is essentially making every conversation matter in order to build the plot or to build character development. So the role of the narrator, I would say, in an audio drama is to set the scene and to also add some extra information as to how the characters might be feeling or a little bit extra information about character thoughts. I think specifically thoughts because you don't always get to see or hear what the characters are thinking in the same way um, as you might in a animation or a film or other visual or novels as well. So that kind of bridges the gap there. And I'm going to actually make a whole video about this, but your script format is super important and there's different ways to format a script. So, like for audio drama specifically, I kind of do it as if I'm writing a screenplay for a movie, or I guess kind of like if you're doing a TV screenplay as well. Don't quote me on that though. But there is like a BBC format for audio dramas. It's designed in a way that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, so I don't format it that way, but you need to have some type of professional scripting format. Now, before I was using, or I'm still using this, there's a Google Drive extension for script formatting. I love it because it's free. That's why I'm planning to make a video where I talk a little bit more about it. I'm going to go over like the features of it, how to use it. But I also recently purchased Final Draft, which I think is it's definitely much more professional. However, I would say that the thing I don't like about it is I can only work on it on one device. So maybe it's not the best thing to admit, but sometimes if I'm at work, if I have extra time, I like to open up my scripts and like to work on it. So if you have more than one device, I don't think you can download Final Draft in those. And I'm kind of doubting myself. I feel like I should look it up, but I'm not going to spend my time on that either way. Um, Having like something like Final Draft is kind of nice because it formats it really nicely for you. You can kind of make sure that your formatting is on point. But the Google Drive extension works perfectly well as well. For those of you starting out and don't have a big budget, I know for myself, I've loved using it. Um, Oh, I know what it is. When it comes to Final Draft, what I like about it is that it'll automatically do the continued part. of characters' lines. So, like if a character speaks and it goes on to the next page, it'll automatically say continued for you. This is not a big deal. You can do that on your own, but I just find it a real pain in the behind to do that. So, that's just my personal reason why I wanted to go with a final draft. So, the actual writing process, a lot of it is honestly just scripting it. I mean, formatting it properly and just making sure that as the characters talk to each other, it's progressing the story along. So I had that whole video about crafting dialogue. So when you're actually done with writing your physical script, the next part is revision and editing. Again, in the crafting dialogue video, I did talk about this a bit, but it's super key to read your script out loud. It's a piece of writing that isn't just meant to be read, it's meant to be heard. Even in animation, if it's going to be watched, it's going to be heard as well. So super important that you read it aloud. I think it's super nice if you can read it with somebody else. Kind of allows you to hear the different characters and gives you a good sense good sense of if something sounds repetitive, if characters don't sound distinct, little things like that. So another useful piece is to have some peer revision. This looks like having someone just read the script as it is. Maybe you guys aren't reading it together, but just kind of their opinion on, is the story interesting? Would you want to see more of it? And just overall thoughts. And so another important takeaway I got from Save the Cat is kind of pitching your idea to complete strangers. So I think that this is really useful if you can talk about your story and see if someone is interested in it. You kind of get a good barometer for if your story is interesting and what kind of tweaks you need to make. So for Alamondra, I know now, kind of looking back, there were people interested, people that I got to subscribe to my channel, but I don't think that was the right way to go necessarily. I think I should have just went with, this is what my story is about. If you're interested, follow me on Instagram. I think because just kind of going off of things, my YouTube channel, I think, should just attract people that are interested in writing advice, indie creators, things of that nature. So I kind of didn't market in a way that made a lot of sense. So that's the other component about turning your idea into something tangible. It's like, how do you market your script? How do you market your idea to folks? It's a process I'm still learning how to do myself. So, yeah. And also with writing scripts, it's also something that I'm still developing. I think we all are still on our journeys. So I really wish you all the best with creating your script. Uh, I know I feel like sometimes I wish I could tell you more about the actual just writing of it, but that's just kind of what you have to do. You kind of have to just sit down, write. You can't worry too much. Like, is it going to be perfect? That's why you have the editing and the revision process. So, yeah, I mean, just go out there, write your script, and wish you the best. Make sure you keep certain tips, certain things in mind. And again, wishing you all the best. I know that you guys got this. And happy writing.